What's up, guys? Today we're going to be reacting to a little bit of Jonathan B's conversation with Jeff Kripal, who is a Rice professor of religion, comparative religion, I believe. And I'm going to try to be like not a jerk on this video because I put out some reaction videos in the past week, and apparently my takes are getting people up in arms. So I'm going to try to play nice on this one. This video was actually because I had a conversation, or not really a conversation, but really a text thread, of like a single reply between myself and this gentleman, Jonathan B here. He's a philosophy YouTuber, for those of you who don't know, but, he had posted a video of him talking with Jeff Kripal, and they were speaking about religion, and, Jeff Kripal's coming from this, I guess you could say, comparative religion background, and he very much shares this pluralist view where essentially all the religions are equal in some sense but deficient in some sense, and the ultimate truth is, for him, something more connected to personal experience. Now, I've actually written about this in the past on my website, about what's called the cult of personal experience, and so we're just going to kind of be reacting to the video, and I'm going to be giving my take here. If you guys want to go read more on my website, you can go look that up. But essentially, I'm going to be coming at this from the viewpoint that your personal experience is not this infallible guide, right? And not even reason itself is, an infallible guide for you. Reason, we will soon see, is something that we kind of presuppose, but yeah, anyways, we'll go ahead and hop into this. Anyways, so the description for the video here, he says, 2 years ago, I witnessed a Christian miracle, but I did not convert, not because I thought the miracle was fraudulent. I think it was genuine, but because of the existence of other genuine miracles in competing religious traditions. Even more frustrating, these traditions give the same unconvincing explanation of the others' miracles: demons, fraud, or at best, lesser revelations. Christian holy men tell me Buddhism has been hijacked by Satan. Buddhist monastics tell me Christ is a bodhisattva for a lesser civilization, not ready for the ultimate truth. I don't find any of these answers compelling. So how is one to decide between competing religious claims? I think this is the chief tension of the video, and something we're going to probably return to, a few different times. But how do you decide between competing religious claims? It's a valid question, and it seems like here, the method is comparing various miracles, but I'm going to put forth the case that this is actually not the right way to go about comparing religions. And the reason why is because, and I'll grant what Jonathan is saying here, all religions have miracle claims, right? Every single person probably has had some supernatural experience. However, one thing that is also kind of present in a lot of different religions is the concept of deceiving spirits, right? Or like in Buddhism, for example, you have this concept of Maya. You have this concept of your personal experience being in some sense illusory. And so what I kind of found, or what I was trying to point out to Jonathan, was this sense in which an appeal to personal experience, or an appeal to like your personal feelings of being convinced, or your experience of miracles, this is actually not a sufficient way to go about deciding different religious claims. And that much is clear just from Jonathan's own self-reporting. He legitimately says he's on his seeker's journey. He doesn't feel convinced by any one single religion. He's having trouble navigating these things. And it's a tough quandary to be in, right? Because I've been in a place where I was wondering what the true religion was. I've always believed in God, just from, I guess, an innate sense within me. But I wouldn't say that personal experience of mine, oh, well, I just feel God. I wouldn't say that that's ultimately the proof, right? Because I would be committing the same sort of fallacy I'm accusing Jonathan and Jeff Kripal here of, which is this appeal to personal experience. My personal experience. Personal experience is kind of a dogma that now in the modern day we are, I guess, too too scared to question, right? We don't want to question other people's personal experiences. Who am I to question your personal experience? We don't want to question our own personal experiences because, I mean, that throws us into a little bit too much doubt. That throws us into a little bit of a state that is very stressful, right? This idea that we might ourselves be not the most reliable conveyors of our own experience. Anyways, long story short. So he said, how is one to decide between competing religious claims? This is going to be the main question, I would say, of this video. This is the burning question that has motivated my seeker's journey for the past few years, and my guest, Rice University's Jeff Kripal, has given me the most compelling response yet. And so we'll see in this reaction if the response is actually compelling. After 2 years of talking with every religious scholar, practitioner, monastic I could find, it is this interview that I find most convincing by far. He figured it out. Now let me be clear. What I find so compelling is less so Jeff's answer and more his method. Jeff takes seriously, number one, the miraculous claims of all Orthodox religions, but also, number two, the modern critiques of these religions, biblical criticism, science, Freud, Feuerbach, and last but not least, he also integrates the contemporary supernatural, near-death experiences, remote viewing, UAPs, telepathy, reincarnation research. Okay, so already we kind of have this assumption that all of these methods are themselves, they can all exist on a neutral ground and they can all inform one another. I also was in a similar place not too long ago. Whenever I was transitioning out of Protestantism and I eventually ended up converting to Orthodoxy, I went through this middle phase at the time because as a Protestant, I had these presuppositions. Number one was sola scriptura, this idea that the text alone can tell us what the religion is and can inform us and can be an authority. What I the problem with that was, you do have these modern scholars who are critical. The modern critical, historical critical tradition of scholars that kind of poke holes in the text and use textual criticism to call into question the validity of certain aspects of Scripture. And of course, I was responding to that with my Protestant presupposition of, oh no, the text is inerrant, the text is infallible, we can trust the biblical scriptures, we can trust the scriptures. That was my presupposition. And I have these modern liberal scholars, these modern progressive Christians. They were saying, well, we can't trust this piece of Paul where he says women should wear head coverings and be silent in church, and that Skittles is sin. These things seem like interpolations. We don't have them in earlier manuscripts. Yada 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 yada. We should take it out. And I was like, whoa, why are we taking these things out of the Bible? Like, we can't just take things out of the Bible at random, right? Because of our presupposition of what the text should look like at the end of the day. So I obviously went down the rabbit hole of trying to ask myself, where does the Bible come from? And where do we get the canon of Scripture? How do we know which books are supposed to go in? And that was the beginning of the end for my Protestantism, because I later learned that Martin Luther removed texts from Scripture based on what he thought the text ought to be. And so as a Protestant, I was put between a rock and a hard place, because if Martin Luther had the right to remove scriptures based on his presuppositions of what the gospel ought to be, or the message of Scripture ought to be, then the same could be true for these modern liberal scholars. There's no reason why they didn't have the right. I mean, they were the scholars. They have the research. They've done the science. Trust the science. Trust the experts. Anyways, what I mean to say is that I kind of just presupposed that there was this neutral ground by which I could judge all of the data, and that I was going to be able to come to some objective idea of what the truth is if I just lay out all the data and consider it all neutrally. But what you'll find is that all of us have presuppositions, and a lot of us have unobserved presuppositions. A lot of us don't actually know the presuppositions that we're operating on. It's hard for a person to begin to question their own presuppositions, because in my case, when I got down to the question of, well, do we trust these liberal scholars? Blah, 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 blah. It's very similar to the question of if we should trust science, right? Is science objective? Can we trust science? Should we be empiricists? Should we tell ourselves that the only thing that we can know is what can be verified through empirical sense data? Well, that claim is not something we can verify through sense data. You can't use the scientific method to prove the scientific method. No matter how many times you observe a particular, that doesn't mean that it's a law. It doesn't mean it's a universal law. It just means that you've observed it this many times. If a turkey observes, 1,000 days in a row that every time the farmer comes out to feed him, he's going to get fed, or that every time the farmer comes out of the house, the turkey's going to get fed. The turkey can observe that for as many times as he wants, but and he can assume that it's a universal law and that it's unchanging, and that he can trust that it's a universal law that when the farmer comes out, the turkey's going to get fed, until the day when the turkey obviously gets slaughtered and eaten. So what I mean to say is that, like, no matter how many, what I mean to say is that science, it kind of operates on this cognitive bias where it's like, we're going to use the most modern, up-to-date research and the best tools, and we're going to use our reason. But reason is something that it's sort of a presupposition we don't question. And I'm going to kind of make the case here that reason actually is not something that is even, it's not even a thing. It's not even a thing you can even really trust outside of the Christian paradigm. And it's because, well, we'll kind of get into that later. But what I want to point out here is that in the critique of Christianity, or in the questioning of Christianity, one ends up sort of presupposing the Christian paradigm. One ends up presupposing the Christian view of reason and of reality. And a lot of these arguments that are being made against Christianity tend to smuggle in a lot of presuppositions that are themselves unfounded. Anyways, he says, Jeff is the only religious scholar I know who not only takes these three seemingly incompatible spheres seriously, but has integrated them into a unifying theory. And if you're at all curious about the religious question, I cannot recommend Jeff's work enough for both scholars and seekers. Now, integral theory, that was another thing that was very interesting to me. There was this kind of movement, and I later found out it was sort of an astroturfed movement that was, had some money being put into it that was motivating it. But there's this movement, it's like the metamodern movement or the integralist movement, and it's this idea that we can move forward with this perennial view of religion that integrates all the aspects of these varying world religions and also all the science. And we can use philosophy of mind. We can use all these tools at our disposal, and we can come up with this one unified theory. Now, obviously, the presupposition here is that the truth is something spread out across all these different traditions, and that the truth is not something contained in one singular tradition. Plenty of traditions make the claim that their tradition is uniquely the one that contains truth. That's not controversial. I don't even think it's anything that's really wrong to do. I think it's honestly kind of honest if a tradition is willing to stake itself on the claim of its unique, exclusive truthfulness. But I mean, think about this: like, why should we be integral in our approach, right? Because again, we're assuming that all of these different elements that we're integrating are neutral and not harmful to our overall view of truth. When I'm cooking, I don't want to have an integral view of everything in the kitchen, right? I don't want to use every single spice, because that's the only way I can get to an objectively good meal, right? You do have to assume certain value judgments. You do have to assume a goal that you're after. All of these things are just taken for granted in the integral view. Anyways, let's just go ahead and hop into the video. So it starts out, we're going to be he's going to sort of argue against Western monotheism. Let's go. Let's do it. Well, actually, real quick, before we hop into the video, I'm going to share this. I'm going to share this little text thread that we had. So somebody had replied, an Orthodox person had replied and just attached a PDF of The Gurus, The Young Man, and Elder Paisios. And Jonathan B. said, I read it after going on a pilgrimage to Mount Athos last year, was not moved by the author's account of Hinduism and demons. That was not my experience of Eastern religion or Buddhism at all. So again, we're sort of just assuming that we can trust our own experience, because we would say, for example, in the Christian view, from the Christian paradigm, of course, that's what we're speaking from. I can't pretend to speak from anything else. In the Christian paradigm, you can be blinded. You can be spiritually blinded. Sin is actually something that can prevent you from seeing reality objectively and seeing reality as God sees it. You can become futile in your reasoning. You can suppress the truth in unrighteousness. There are a lot of things that go into our perception. And one thing that is sort of assumed in the scientific worldview, or even in the worldview that says my personal experience is the ultimate way that I can interface with reality, it just assumes that your personal view is objective. It just assumes that you're not seeing things through a biased lens. Again, why should we trust our personal experience? Not saying we can't. I actually think that we can trust our personal experience, but that's because I'm arguing from a Christian paradigm. And, again, I'm going to continually point out, you're presupposing Christianity when you critique it, or when you make these appeals to things like science or objectivity or truth or universal truths or whatever. Anyways, I replied to him and I said, I think the final pill, because you have the red pill, which is like, you can see reality for what it really is, but there's no turning back. Or there's the blue pill where you go back to sleep. But I think after the red pill, because a lot of people take the red pill, but they maybe don't finally come to Christ. But for me, I think the final pill obviously is Christ. But the final pill is being able to transcend your own personal experience in the pursuit of truth. How do you do that? How can a person even transcend their own personal experience? What would that even mean? How would that even be possible? And I pretty much just told him, consider this, there are, or there at least might be, deceiving spirits. You can, in fact, be deceived, and even at times express a capacity to self-deceive. What do you do now? And I don't think he really understood the critique, because number one, first thing he did was hit me with a tu quoque. Well, how are you sure that Christ is not a deceiving spirit? Right, that's a tu quoque. So what I'm doing here is an internal critique. I'm actually not even bringing Christ into the picture in my tweet. I never mentioned Christ. Obviously, I have an Orthodox cross in my name, but I wasn't even arguing for the Christian paradigm just yet. I was just calling into question his presuppositions. And mind you, all of these things are things that, Buddhism and Hinduism, as far as I know, admit, right? These religions admit that there are deceiving spirits. They admit that you can be deceived. They talk about things like Maya, the concept of, illusion and, self-deception and things like that. So within these systems, if they admit these things, what do we do now? What do we do now that it's possible for us to be self-deceived? And I would also say that even in the empiricist view, it is possible for us to be self-deceived. I mean, Hume talked about how he's attributing causal relations to events, but he himself actually is not able to perceive these causal relations. He's just assuming them. And so this is a universal problem for all worldviews. He said, how are you sure Christ is not a deceiving spirit? Serious religions do claim this. So again, we have a tu quoque to begin with. He says, well, what about you? Okay, that's not an answer to the question. But then he says, serious religions do claim this. Okay. Other than the fact that that's just kind of flippant and sort of, I think, kind of disrespectful. Because what's implied here is that Christianity is not a serious religion, even though Christianity claims all of these things. I don't know. Maybe he wasn't. Maybe I'm importing motivation into that where I shouldn't be. Like I said, I'm trying to be nicer on this video. I've gotten a lot of hate comments on the past few videos because of my rhetorical style. And I just kind of hit him back with the fact that, what I'm saying here is not turn to Christ right now. It's unquestionable. What I'm saying is, you have a disguised presupposition, Jonathan B., which is the presupposition that you, through your autonomous reason, your autonomous human reasoning, can neutrally weigh all of these different religious options and assess the truth claim of religions. This is kind of the human-centric view of reality, this idea that my limited, finite mind can come to judgments about reality, which it's like, how can you come to universal truths with just a human, limited, finite mind? I mean, it's the history of Western philosophy is trying to get ourselves out of this mind. And I don't know if anyone's told you or if anyone's told Mr. Jeff Kripal here, but Western philosophy is at a complete dead end. The only reason that there are still philosophy departments is because philosophy professors want to keep their jobs. But philosophy, Western philosophy, it's dead. It's over. Okay, we have figured out that we really can't know anything just through our reason alone or through philosophy alone. Anyways, what I point out here that this is an internal critique. I'm not even putting forth the, Christian position on this. I'm really just responding to the position he's already put forward. I'm applying its own logic to itself. Anyways, that's a lot of rambling. Let's just hop into the video right now, because I was kind of skimming the video before this video, and I do think that there's some parts of Jeff Kripal's presentation that I think are fallacious. I think he appeals to a lot of fallacies in his reasoning. Anyways, let's hop into it.
Yeah, welcome to the club. That's my problem. I believe too much, as it were. One of the things that I grew up Roman Catholic in the American Midwest, and the claim was always that, well, the Catholic Church is right because miracles only exist in the Catholic faith.
Okay, so right away, I mean, I kind of, I sympathize with people who grew up Roman Catholic, because this is like, how many times have you guys heard this story, right? Somebody's like, yeah, I grew up Roman Catholic, and the church said this, but then I realized it wasn't true because blah, 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 blah. Roman Catholicism really is like an atheist factory. And this was, you could say, prophetically stated by Gregory Palamos in his debate between Palamos and a Barlaymite. He essentially said, if you continue down this path, he's speaking obviously to the Roman Catholic Church here, the Western Church. If you continue down this path, it is going to logically lead to atheism. And a lot of people, because of their experience of the Catholic Church, they end up coming away atheists, because they're like, I was around these people. They did not seem transformed. They did not provide good answers for what I was searching. There's all these abuses, blah, 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 blah. And people end up falling away. Now, again, somebody's personal experience or their personal feelings of being convinced, is that how we assess truth ultimately? No, I don't think it is, or how we should. But it is how people assess the truth, and it can cause people to fall away from Roman Catholicism. I'm not going to be defending Roman Catholicism in this video. Obviously, I'm an Orthodox Christian, so I do believe that this is just partially like the fruits of Catholicism. And what we'll find actually is that he says he left the Catholic Church because he was unconvinced by their reasoning, namely that Roman Catholicism is true because of miracles. But what we'll find later on is that he is still very much informed by his Catholic upbringing. And that's a very prominent theme a lot of times with religious personalities, is that a lot of times it's hard for them to escape the velocity of whatever their kind of upbringing was, because our presuppositions are so deeply embedded. You're very much a product of your environment. Obviously, you have individual choices that can lead you to different conclusions, but you are very much informed by your upbringing. And what's interesting too is he's going to bring up Nietzsche later in this video. Nietzsche, one of the most profound insights I think that I was able to draw from Nietzsche whenever I read him was that he essentially said all philosophers, you have to understand their philosophy as them presenting their sort of bias and treating it like it is objective reality. And that is that's a very sharp observation that is going to be very apparent here.
And that's just not true.
Right. Empirically,
it's just not true. And when you study comparative religion, you learn that there are actually miracles everywhere and always, as it were, as far as we can see back and everywhere we can see. And so
This is true. Like if you go and you study comparative religion, I mean, you will find that there are miracles in all religions, so-called miracles in all religions, which is why obviously we wouldn't argue that miracles are what ultimately prove a religion or disprove a religion. Now, are they given a lot of times as signs in the Old Testament? Yeah, they're given as signs. However, there's a story in the New Testament where some people are trying to test Jesus. They're like, show us a sign to prove that you're the Son of God. And he says, a wicked generation seeks after a sign. What does that mean? What does it mean that a wicked generation seeks after a sign? It essentially means that if that is what you're going to try to use to determine whether or not Jesus is the Son of God or determine whether or not Christianity is true, then you're already operating on false, like a false type of reasoning. You're already working off of a fallacious type of reasoning.
the question for me isn't whether to be religious, as it were, it's how to be religious.
Yeah, that's a fair question. How do we be religious? That's sort of that is an ethical question. How do we be religious? Yeah, I think that's fair.
And the problem is religious identity. It's not that there aren't things happening. It's not that there aren't miracles happening. It's that those ethical systems get built up through very elaborate social and political and economic channels. And I grew up inside a tradition, and I don't have a problem with Catholicism per se, but I know that its ethical systems have histories.
You know how the sausage is.
Right. What's kind of odd to say that, certain religious ethical systems have histories and then to appeal to personal experience, which he's going to appeal to his personal experience again and again in order to, I guess, add proof to his view or to try to back up or argue for his view, which is essentially just like a perennialist view that all religions are just, they're all different masks for one true divine reality. But so he's pretty much saying these religious institutions, they have histories, and that, that's why we can't trust them, or their ethics developed over history or something like that. And that's why we can't trust them. But the same could be true of the individual, right? We're going to appeal to personal experience again and again. Do you as an individual not have personal history? Is your personal history not how you came to certain conclusions? So by your own reasoning, you could also distrust your personal experience.
I know that for a fact. And I know that what the ethical systems are, what the Catholic ethical systems are, have an inside and an outside. And I know that they're very different on the inside than they're on the outside. And my assumption, which I think is perfectly true, is that the same is true everywhere. And once you reduce religion to ethics.
So the fact that it's true everywhere that the religious systems or the ethical systems have an inside and an outside, which I don't even know what that means. What does it mean for an ethical system to have an inside and an outside? Do you mean a double standard? I don't know what that means exactly or what he's trying to get across, but the fact that that's true everywhere doesn't actually tell us anything about the validity of a claim. That's like when people argue, well, all these religions disagree, so how do we know which one's true? The fact that there's disagreements doesn't mean that, we can't come to a knowledge of what's true, or that we can't assess which one is correct. It just means that people disagree.
I think you're done. I think it's not even interesting at that point. So this is a different conversation.
Yeah.
Whether truth is ethical at all,
right,
and whether those categories even make sense. I'm not saying it's unethical. I'm saying it's truth is beyond good and evil, to use Nietzsche's language or the Upanishadic language. I mean, I really.
Okay, boom. So he pretty much said truth is beyond good and evil, which is, first of all, weird because he's appealing to Nietzsche, but then Nietzsche talks about how like truth itself is not even like a real thing, or that, Nietzsche, he kind of has a strange view of truth and, if it's even possible. I wrote a little bit about Nietzsche here. I've written a lot about Nietzsche just because of my personal experience reading Nietzsche. But right here, we have a discussion of Nietzsche's view of art and truth. He talks about how we have art in order not to perish from the truth. For Nietzsche, truth is not something we actually should even bother with, right? He sees it as something limiting. He says, what is good? All that heightens the feelings of power, the will to power, power itself in man. And so we're going to kind of get this view of morality where morality is subjective. It doesn't really matter. There's no such thing as good and evil. And so it's immediately from the outset, it's going to be hard for us to say, well, then people ought to follow the truth or people ought to this or that, because he's going to continually appeal to the truth. He's going to continually appeal to, this need to integrate all these different religions, but all of these are kind of moral claims. Why should we bother with truth, right? If it doesn't ultimately matter.
They don't think it's ethical or moral in a social or egoic sense.
Right.
Sorry, what? What is he saying? 629.
Than evil, to use Nietzsche's language or the Upanishadic language. I mean, I really don't think it's ethical or moral in a social or egoic sense.
Right. Well, we're going to talk about your methodology of new comparativism and looking between the religions. I still think I'm still at the stage of examining each Orthodox tradition to see if any of them can be true for the following reason.
They're all true, by the way.
Well, the Orthodox reading of the Orthodox religions.
Yeah.
The Orthodox
They're all true, by the way. But are they? I mean, they all make radically different claims. I think this would be something that would be fairly obvious for a professor of religion, right? I think that the perennialist view is kind of the lazy view. It's kind of the lazy way out. It's like there's so much difference between the religions, so much incontrovertible difference between their views of ethics, their views of metaphysics, their views of epistemology, how do we know things. He's trying to write off the kind of ethical question here. He's saying, oh, well, ethics, it doesn't really matter. Religions aren't ultimately at root moral. But that's just blatantly not true. I mean, that's just blatantly not true. You might say that you believe in a subjectivist ethic. You might believe that, morality is constructed. That might be your view. But to say that religion has nothing to do with morals, I'm sorry, but that's just a failure to seriously engage with any religion ever. Even pagan religion, the whole concept of taboo, the whole concept of superstition is the gods seem to operate in this way. We want to avoid certain outcomes. Therefore, we need to act and operate in this certain way. How is that not moral? It's just silly. It's just really silly.
Exclusivist
I know.
claims.
They all say we're the only truth. Or
Right.
We're the ultimate truth.
Or the ultimate, yeah, after Vatican II.
So if they all say that they are the ultimate truth, but also the truth is not something particular to one religion and it's spread out across all of these religions, aren't all religions that claim exclusive truth false, at least in that way? Well, all of the religions are true, except whenever they say that they're the only true religion. So they're not all true all the time.
And stuff.
Yeah.
And so
They're also apparently not true whenever they say you should and have to act in this way to be moral, or to, these are the moral strictures.
my question is, the problem I have right now, right? Again, it's not, I found this great contradiction within a tradition. It's that they're equivalent. But that equivalent doesn't mean that one of them is necessarily wrong, right?
Okay, so Jonathan B. is bringing up a genuine concern of his, which is that whenever you assess all of these systems, when you assess them all and you compare them as worldviews, they all kind of feature an internal, or they appear to feature an internal coherence. They all seem to make sense based on their own presuppositions. Now, I don't necessarily think that's true. Ultimately, that's one of the reasons why I became an Orthodox Christian. I believe, and I believe that I've observed that it is uniquely coherent and consistent. You see my cats fighting in the background. Hey guys, cut it out. I'm doing a video. I'm doing a very serious intellectual video right now. But so what he's saying is essentially that when I'm trying to assess all these religions and I'm using my reason to parse out each one, then they all seem like they make sense within their own internal logic. And it's a genuine struggle, right? To try to assess the truth claims of religions based on your own personal experience and reasoning alone. Yeah. Anyways, we'll kind of continue.
Right? And so I also don't want to draw the opposite conclusion. So but my question is, why are you so certain that one of the orthodox, like maybe the Christians just got it right, maybe everyone else is a demon or a lesser revelation, why are you so sure that's wrong?
I've spent my whole life looking at different religious systems, and
Appeal to authority.
that is a conclusion I've drawn, or that is
Reassertion. So he's like, I've spent my whole life studying different religions. That's the conclusion I've drawn. So it's like a bare assertion fallacy. It's appeal to authority. Okay, what's the argument? Why is that the conclusion that you've drawn?
it's an intuition that
It's an intuition, so that's appeal to emotion, appeal to personal
all of
experience.
these religious systems give people something, and they do different things, and they lead to different ends, but none of them are ultimate in the sense we're talking about. I mean, look, when
Okay, so again, just reasserting what he already has argued. He asked you why that's the case. Why is it the case that you feel this way? And Mr. Rice, professor man, super high IQ academic guy, he just reasserts his position. It's like, no, why? What's the argument?
when I was a kid, and I was surrounded by people who were religious in what I would call transactional ways. They believe such and such and perform certain rituals to get certain things. And I was always the kid who said, yeah, but what if it's not true? What about the truth?
Well, but I thought truth was relative. Also, why are you giving us a story? Why are we getting your biography? Again, it's this appeal to, in my personal experience, blah, 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 blah. Well, but wait, I thought we already assessed that your personal experience is fallible. So, but your personal experience is fallible or infallible? I mean, we can trust it with absolute certainty. Wait, all religions are true, but also all religions are false because people were hypocritical as a kid. What? People in your religion were hypocritical as children? Aren't non-religious people also hypocritical at times? I don't understand the argument here. It's a very bad argument. One thing you will continually be surprised at is the so-called academics are, a lot of times they have faultier reasoning than just the average Joe Schmo on the street. At least Joe Schmo would be like, I don't know, man. I like, most people I've talked to will avoid talking about religion because they're like, I don't know enough about it to have a fully formed opinion. I know what I feel, but also I'm not going to try to argue it. I'm not going to try to say that I know better. I'm going to keep it to myself. These academics, though, they spend so much time in the literature and they come away with these takes of, dude, it's all true. And like, we're all one, man. And like, when I was a kid, like some Catholic people were mean. I don't want to straw man this guy or anything like that, but it's just like, this is sort of the level of the arguments here. And ultimately it just keeps coming back to, well, my personal experience. Well, but in my personal experience.
What about, is there a God? Did God have a son? Is Jesus truly human and truly divine? I mean, these were like real issues for me. And I think what modern education does to some of us is it holds out this truth that isn't just transactional. Because I think a lot of education, it's about vocation. It's about business school. It's about medical school. It's about law school. It's like skill sets, essentially. And let me back up.
Yeah, please.
Let me back.
What are we even talking about? Like, he's talking about how school is about like skill sets and stuff. And I guess maybe the point there was that school doesn't equip you for critical thinking or something like that. I don't really know. Like, where are we even going?
Back up. So over this last holiday season, I did something really nerdy, and I read Plato's Republic, believe it or not. I read the whole thing.
Believe it or not, I read Plato's Republic. Wow. Oh, that's so nerdy.
And it's very clear that education, even in ancient Greece, yes, part of it was very much about making the better soldier or the carpenter, but part of it was getting out of the cave.
Right.
And if you're out of the cave, you see the light. You literally see the light. You see the good or the beautiful. And then the goal is to come back into the cave and to talk to the people, talk to the prisoners back in the cave. But the cave's the cave. And you've seen the light. So you know darn well that people...
Okay, so what he's saying is essentially in Plato's cave. So Plato's cave, for those of you who don't know, it pretty much talks about like the problem of perception. You know, it's kind of similar to the Cartesian problem. It's like, you know, I have this sort of subjective experience going on up here, but what does that actually tell me about the external world? How can I actually know that I know anything about the external world? How do I know that the external world is not just some crazy illusion, right? That I'm just hallucinating and I'm somewhere in a cave and I see the shadows of I see shadows on the wall from the torches and I see what I believe is reality, but really it's just an illusion. Yeah, this is a problem that all monistic systems have. This is a fair question of epistemology raised in Plato. And again, Mr. Rice Professor Man, he doesn't actually give us any justification for how he knows he's got out of the cave. Because again, another problem in Plato. One thing you'll notice when you read Plato's dialogues is that at the end of a dialogue, Socrates he'll just be grilling some random person about what is truth, what is reality, how do we know what these things are, what is courage, what is honor, and he'll kind of go back and forth with them and continue to just precept the person. And finally the person will just be like, you know what, Socrates, I don't know. What is it? Just please tell me. I'm tired of doing this thing. And Socrates will be like, I don't know. And so pretending like Plato gives us the answer to this ultimately, or pretending like Eastern religion gives us the answer to this, or pretending like a perennialist scientific view or a view that combines science and religion together. Ultimately it's just it's silly. Again, it's continually reasserting, well, in my personal experience, I've seen the outside of the cave and I'm going to come back into the cave. I'm going to tell everyone, what it really is. But how do you know? How do you know that you've seen the outside of the cave? How do you know you didn't just go deeper into the illusion? Once again, autonomous reason, or this continual self-assertion that my personal experience is infallible and I can trust my reason and my reason is working objectively. This is something that is presupposed. They're just assuming this, or at least Jeff Kripal is just assuming this. Jonathan B. assumed it in our text thread, but it's not something that has been demonstrated yet.
People are seeing shadows on the wall, as it were. And again, that's really where I'm at, I think all of these religions are shadows on the wall, and they give the prisoner something, but they also take things away.
Right.
And all of them are like that.
Right.
Okay, is your integral perennialist view, is that shadow on the wall as well? Or do you have the objective truth? And also how are we asserting this? Well, dude, I had like this ayahuasca trip where like I saw like the goddess and she told me, she said, this is what we get.
I've spent my life looking at all these traditions. Good luck. You're not going to find a tradition that has all your answers.
According to you. It's just weird. It's like he's doing this thing where it's like, I've seen it all. I know the answers. I've been outside the cave. I know that all these religions are not true, but also like we can't know anything. And it's weird. It's like, I know everything, but also I know nothing. And
you often say that the best hermeneutic is one that can explain all the data, that doesn't have to take any of the data off the table. Again, my challenge to you is the orthodox interpretations of the orthodox faiths, they do explain all the data in the following example. The Christian says to the Buddhists, you're either a demon because you're trying to use your emptiness nonsense to make our believers nihilistic.
You're not a demon.
Or they say...
Okay, so Jonathan B., to his credit, he's trying to steelman Christianity, at least in this one instance. And then he says, well, what about with the Buddhists? They say that, they say to the Buddhist that... what is it? That the Buddhist apparition is a demon or whatever. And Mr. Rice Professor is like, but they're not a demon. It's like, dude, hold your horses. Just let let him explain his argument. Because again, this professor, is just continually just reasserting the argument. Imagine if, I was arguing in favor of the Christian worldview and I just kept reasserting, well, no, Christianity is true, but it's true. But you know it. Instead of when people ask, okay, but why is it true? Like instead of me giving a sort of argumentation for that claim, most people, it's just insane. Like most people don't actually know the difference between a claim and an argument. An argument is something that is used to back up, an argument is something that is used to back up a claim. Yeah.
Vatican II, you are a lesser revelation, right? You are a lesser revelation for less advanced cultures, essentially. Yeah. The Buddha says the same thing about the Christian. I've talked to these masters. They either say they're a demon, they're trying to help you believe in an essentialist soul, get you stuck in samsara, or a Buddhist master told me this last year. This is for lesser revelation. This does not approximate our ultimate truth. So my challenge for you is they do explain the data. They do explain that the other miracles are black magic. right?
It's not persuasive, though, to me.
Right.
Oh, well, I mean, it's settled. It's not persuasive to Mr. Rice, Professor Mann. It's just not persuasive. See, that's a psychological report. That's not an argument.
Right.
I mean, I understand the religions at their most acute or their most intellectual do comparison. They do explain why there are other religions and they relate themselves to those other religious systems. But I'm just not persuaded by their answers.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's just not persuaded. That's a psychological report. It's not an argument.
Because I've heard all those answers.
Because I've heard it.
I've heard that. And no, they're not demons. They might be lesser revelation. I mean, we could talk about how reality is organized and what reality is, but
I'm just... Okay, I mean, can you believe that these people are like paid for... I mean, the whole concept of a professor is like, this is someone with knowledge who's going to impart knowledge into the next generation. This is the elites. These are the intellectual elites.
I don't think the Orthodox Christians have the ultimate answer either.
Right.
You know, I think it's much more likely that the Buddhists probably, they might actually have the
Closer to right.
They might actually, but that.
Yeah. Well. The thing is, right? It's just like so glib. It's like, okay, you're gonna be super glib, but you're not gonna make any arguments. It's like, oh, gosh. I'm rage baiting. I'm actually rage baiting myself watching this. I might have to end this soon. Yeah, I'm rage baiting hard.
That is a choice I made. Let me switch metaphors.
Please.
Switch. So I train graduate students, and I say, look, you don't have any business being a scholar of comparative religion until you've lost at least two worlds. And they look at me and they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, look, if you haven't lost a world, you still think your own religious or cultural or secular world is ultimate. You think it can answer all these questions. If you've lost that...
Okay, so what we're going to see here is that he essentially... So I've pinpointed this guy. So in Suzanne Cook-Greuter's stages of ego development theory, she kind of talks about how you can tell the level of self-awareness a person has and their self-awareness on their meaning-making structures and their worldview construction based on linguistic cues. And there's these progressive stages that are, they show a very reliable linear progression. You have people who are born into whatever their worldview is, and they just trust that their perception is objective reality. And then you have people who kind of move on to the post-conventional stages, and the first echelon of the post-conventional stage is the pluralist view. This view where one suddenly realizes the constructed nature of their worldview. One suddenly realizes the plurality of worldviews out there that are all making seemingly equivalent claims on truth. This is called the pluralist worldview because it literally is the worldview that says, well, all worldviews are equally valid. Except what Mr. Professor Mann doesn't understand, what he doesn't, I guess, realize, and what a lot of people who are stuck in the pluralist view don't realize is that you say all worldviews are valid. What about the worldview that says, or that all worldviews are equal? What about the worldview that says, no, actually, all worldviews are not equal? Is that worldview equal to the worldview that says all worldviews are equal? There's an internal contradiction here. And so, but he doesn't realize that. Anyways, you haven't come to the truth until you've lost at least two worldviews. Well, what if you're born into like, let's just take his view of truth or whatever at face value, or just assume that he's right. What if I was born into a worldview that said that, that said that? What if I was born into a worldview where they said all religions are true, they're all equally whatever, blah, 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 blah. Would I have to lose that worldview?
World, the chances are extremely high you've just jumped into another. And that might be Orthodox Christianity. That might be secular scientism.
Yeah, you could do worse than to be born into Orthodox Christianity.
That might be whatever. And now you think that one has all the answers, but it doesn't either. And when that world then starts to collapse, or you start to question it, you start to hesitate. You're like, well, why should I jump into a third world?
Right.
Because
yeah.
that third world isn't going to be ultimate either. And it's at that point you become an intellectual.
Oh, okay. So now we're an intellectual, right? We're into our third world. We have decided arguments. We don't need arguments. I'm just going to continually assert my position. Now I'm an intellectual. That was easy. That was way easier than I thought. I thought I had to read a bunch of books. I thought I had to make, good arguments. I thought I had to be, a critical thinker. I totally overestimated the criteria to be an intellectual.
Right. And that kind of mirrors my journey, where
Yes.
I've investigated two traditions, and
Yes.
I'm like, well, hold on, but they say claims I can't differentiate. But then what about the others? I draw that conclusion,
So,
right?
but here's the problem with that answer. You're basically alone. You're talking to weird people like me. You're like, there are people who inhabit that space. Yes, there are. But we tend to be very nerdy and very intellectual about it. And we
And persecuted often.
What's that?
Persecuted historically.
Yeah, and we don't have these.
Yeah. Intellectuals have been the ones who've been persecuted historically, not Christians, right?
Large communities or these large traditions. So this is why I say this orientation represents a kind of new era or a kind of future humanity that doesn't exist yet in any.
Whoa, guys, we're really privileged right now because we are getting to kind of get a glimpse into the next humans, like the next level evolution humans. It's just like, it's unbelievable, right? They wear flamboyant little shirts. They sit cross-legged in fancy chairs. They can't make actual arguments, but don't worry, guys, we got to trust the experts. Okay, because these are the next level humans. We got to trust them.
Large numbers.
Right. This is a question I have for you, but maybe I'll frame it in my own context, which is,
I totally went back on my promise that I was going to be nicer in this video. I think I've probably been a bit more vitriolic and rhetorical in this video, but it's just because like these topics get me heated, man. Because I feel like people just can't think clearly about religion. And people just want to immediately jump to, I'm an expert. I'm the expert. And like, I think that in Christianity, it does kind of, the big thing that people don't like about Christianity is you do have to humble yourself. You have to humble yourself before God. You are not God. You do not know more than God. You don't have this objective eagle's eye view, God's eye view, where you can rationally assess the claims of all different religions. And yeah, I'm going to use science. You can't do that. You're automatically in that worldview, assuming that you are the ultimate arbiter of truth, right? You are assuming the place of God. That's sort of the original sin in the garden, is trying to take the place of God.
I'm not even sure what it would take to get me to go into one of these Orthodox religions. Yeah. Let's say Jesus comes down right now in this very room. It's on camera, and he says, Jonathan, I am, what he says in Matthew, I'm the one true way, right? And I'm like, oh, wait a second. Jeff's had that experience with Kali, like showing up to him, and this Buddha master has an experience of Nagarjuna popping up. So,
guess what? There are Orthodox saints who have spoken at length about if in your prayer, okay, this is why in Orthodoxy, imaginative prayer is seen as it's a gateway to spiritual deception, to prelist. Prelist is spiritual deception, spiritual self-deception. You can deceive yourself. In Orthodox prayer, there is a big tradition of people who apparently have Christ appear to them, okay? And later go on to find that this was Satan disguising himself, trying to trick you. There's stories of Orthodox saints who see, flaming chariots of fire at the edge of a cliff, and Christ is saying, "Jump in with me. I will take you to heaven. We will ascend." And when the person starts doing the Jesus prayer, or the person begins to question the apparition, it turns out that this was a demon trying to get the person to jump off a cliff. And so, again, I don't know how these guys are, apparently so they're so brainy, but they can't understand this concept of self-deception. Like, you can deceive yourself. It's totally possible. And also miracles alone are not enough to prove a religion.
Is there anything in the world, historically, philosophically, phenomenologically, that could happen to you? Is there anything that could happen to you to get you convinced by, let's say, one of the Western monotheists?
So again, I think Jesus actually does appear to people, you know, but so does the Buddha, so does Nagarjuna, so do all these other. So I'm deeply suspicious of religious experience, and
he's deeply suspicious of religious experience, but not his own.
Doesn't mean I don't take it very seriously. Of course, I do, but I want to keep all of these religious. I believe too much, Jonathan.
Right.
I want to put them all on the table, and I want everybody's religious experience to be considered, not just this one or that one. And once you put all those on the table, it really changes the table.
But that's why I asked you the question. What would it take to get you at this point?
Yeah, please answer the question, sir. Stop continually just like, oh my gosh, like.
Right. To go back to the, let's say, Catholicism, like what would it take?
I don't know.
Right. But isn't that concerning? I mean, is it concerning for me?
No, it's not concerning to me at all, because I think going back to the religion is going back. I think, you know, I often refer to believing backwards. Belief itself is your affirming to someone else's altered state that happened in the past, or someone else's interpretation of that altered state, really, is what you're really affirming. Why?
Right.
Why are you doing that? It's like near-death experiencers. They'll want me to sign their name, or sign my name to whatever they think the afterlife is. And I'm like, I can't do that.
Right.
Who actually is like sitting here being like, man, I had this near-death experience, but I need Jeff Kripal to affirm that experience before I can really. I mean, who's seriously sitting here and doing that?
Because if I do that, then I can't affirm this other person's near-death experience. Everybody is having.
Everyone's equal. No one. Everyone is equal, but also we're intellectuals. We're the elites. We're beyond good and evil. We're the Nietzschean next level humans. But also everyone's view is equal. And who am I to say whose experience is more valid?
A slightly different experience of the afterlife. What I can really affirm is when you come back from the afterlife, or you come back from a near-death experience, and you affirm that these are all interpretations of something that people are experiencing. Yes.
Whoa, what a profound insight. All of these things, all of these experiences of people are just interpretations. Whoa. Oh my gosh. Like that I mean, guys, this is next level stuff. Like, I hope you're writing this down.
Then I can sign my name.
Right.
Then I can say, okay, let's go that direction. Let's do that.
And again, just for our audience, this is not going to be the entire conversation. We're actually going to go to a positive view of like a non-dualism filter. But let me.
Okay, so we see here the cat's out of the bag. So Western monotheism is fake because people are hypocritical sometimes, and everyone has different religious experiences and visions and blah, 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 blah. But my personal experience is very trustworthy. And also, turns out non-dualism is true. You know, good and evil are not real, apparently. This was like, I mean, guys, this is something that ultimately you got to get this out of your system by, I mean, I got this out of my system by, I think, 23. Like, I read Nietzsche, was very, very influenced by Nietzsche. And then I just by living life and my personal experience, I came to find that that was not true. What if, let's say, for example, what if in my personal experience, I figure out that there is such a thing as good and evil? What now?
Let me again continue grilling you on this one point.
No, it's okay.
Because, I mean, this drives my Christian friends crazy when I say this, but I tell them, if everything in the Bible happened exactly as it said, literally, I say, what's the big deal? Resurrection? That happens all the time. Pagan gods get resurrected all the time. Empty tomb, Tibetan Buddhists today, their bodies disappear, rainbow bodies, very well reported. Miracles, there's a lot cooler miracles in the history of religion than multiplying fish and turning water into wine, right? Eternal life, Taoism, forgiving sins, tantric masters taking up people's karma and then resolving it. And I ask them, like, it drives them crazy, right? Like, what is the big deal? Even claiming that he's God. I and the Father are one. This is a common claim within Indian mystics, right? Is that the kind of thing you're gesturing at? Like, I can affirm everything.
Well, again, it's more complicated than that because, of course, not everything in the Bible happened.
Right. But I'm saying even if.
Right.
So Mr. Rice, Professor Mann says, not everything in the Bible happened. How do we know that? That did he personally experience the Bible? I mean, it's just like,
Yeah, I think again, it's believing too much. It's not believing too little. It's you're affirming everything. You're not just.
you're affirming everything, but also denying parts of the Bible because it didn't happen apparently according to our data. I mean, my time machine actually gave me empirical data about the flood.
Affirming this particular tradition or this particular community. I read the entire Bible. I was trained in biblical studies. I know it well. That was my original tradition. It just ain't true.
Oh, guys, it's settled, right? He read the whole Bible, and it's just not true. I mean, I'm so thankful that we have these very, just like, oh my gosh, these minds that we can benefit from. I'm so guys, we should count ourselves lucky.
What people say about the Bible.
Wait, it's not true what people say about the Bible? I thought all worldviews and all religious claims were equally valid. What? I'm getting confused. I'm trying to get on board this cult, bruh. I'm trying to join your cult, and I'm getting kind of a little bit mixed up. I don't know what I'm supposed to think here.
It's just nonsense. It's not true.
Can you give an example? I think you think the most compelling example.
Well, this whole notion of family values is complete nonsense. It's not in the New Testament text. It's anti-family.
Okay, this is but he hasn't read the Bible, right? If you had read the Bible, if you pick it up and flip to a random page, you would see that this guy is a liar. You are a liar, Jeff Kripal. Okay, this whole concept of family values, it's not even in the Old Testament. Yeah, what about the verse of Paul where he says that if a person does not provide for his household, he's worse than an unbeliever? I mean, that's just off dome. I mean, oh my gosh.
Really, at the end of the day, there's a kind of sexual transgression that runs throughout all of the biblical texts, both the Jewish and the Christian texts, and the idea that we're going to get some family values it's just nutty.
Right. Jesus says.
So one thing I learned while I was kind of doing a little bit of research on this guy, Jeff Kripal, was that he apparently wrote like his dissertation or something on how one of the Hindu gods or something was in a homoerotic relationship or something like that. I'm kind of starting to pinpoint where we're at with this guy because we got the shirt, we got the socks. Socks are dead giveaway. We got this whole hippy dippy. Yeah, man, it's all equal, man. I mean, like Bible's not even true, man. Like Jesus was like totally like whatever, and. Also, the first thing he goes to doubt about the Bible is the concept of family values. And then we're going to assert that sexual transgression is an ethic all throughout the Bible, which, by the way, why I thought we weren't supposed to trust the Bible. I thought the Bible was not trustworthy. But also when it says that, you can do the naughty stuff. That's the good part of the Bible. We trust that part. But also it never says anything about family values. And I've read the whole thing. Trust me, I've read the whole thing. One thing I want to go ahead and point out, guys, is like when somebody says, when somebody has to make sure they let you know, like they're critical of the Bible and they have to make sure they let you know. I've read the whole Bible. Guys, there's like super devout Christians that have never read the whole Bible, okay? It's a big book. It's a really big book, okay? These people are not reading the Bible, okay? He is not reading the Bible. He's a Roman Catholic. He hasn't read the Bible. Okay, or he was a Roman Catholic. Roman Catholics specifically are not, they are specifically not as interested in reading the Bible compared to, say, like Protestant or Orthodox. Okay, that's not a jab at them. That was admitted to me by an ex-girlfriend who was a Roman Catholic. I remember asking her one time, so what are your favorite Bible stories? Well, she's like, I don't really know any. I was like, what? What do you mean you don't know any? Like, it's your religion. Like you didn't learn any in like Vacation Bible School or anything like that? She's like, well, that's just, those things aren't really just important like to us. And I get it. She's just one person. I'm sure there's Roman Catholics that read their Bible. I'm probably gonna get comments of Roman Catholics saying, "Oh, I read my Bible," and we get it. Okay, you're gold star. You get the gold star, whatever. But what I mean to say is that like people just like assert stuff, and they literally just are like, "Trust me, bro. Trust me, bro. I've read the Bible. Trust me, bro."
If you don't hate your family, you can't, right? Or be a eunuch for the kingdom of God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I literally, I've written about that. I wrote about the.
Yeah, they don't this guy, Jeff Kripal, he doesn't understand when the Bible says you have to, Jesus says, unless one hates his father and mother, he cannot follow me. What it means is, because there's another verse where a young man is saying, hey, Jesus, I want to follow you, but I have to bury my father first. So it's implied here that his father was old or aging. And what he's essentially saying is, I want to make sure I get to live out the rest of my life, or the rest of my father's life, and take care of him, and then I'll come follow you. And what Jesus is essentially pointing to is not that, well, you shouldn't take care of your parents. You should just you should ignore your parents. You should hate them. You should slash their tires. That's not what that means. Hate means to reject or to put something in a lesser place. What the principle he's putting forth here is that our loyalty to God ought to be even higher than our loyalty to our own family. Because also in the Old Testament, it's like he says, the Bible says nothing about family values. Really? What about the part that it says, in the Ten Commandments that, honor your father and your mother, and that if a person doesn't honor their father and mother, that they should be put to death. That's what the Old Testament says. I mean, are we going to seriously sit here and pretend like Jesus was this radical, anti-family person? And again, Paul, because what they're pointing to is, oh, well, see, you have this monastic tradition where people are celibate and where they're espousing virginity and the merits of virginity. But what that is that in Christianity, everything's about hierarchy. I wouldn't expect these people to get it, because for them, everything has to be on a completely even plane. But in Christianity, it's about hierarchy. God is above all other things. Your relationship to God and your loyalty to God has to be paramount. It has to be above all other things. And then also, when it comes to the Christian life, monasticism is more blessed than family life, because you can just devote yourself entirely to God. You're wedded to God. You are not distracted by things like having to take care of your family. But Paul says, wherever a person finds himself, whether it be in slavery, whether it be married or unmarried, wherever you are when you are found in Christ, don't seek to change that. Just accept where you are, be content with where you are, and just fulfill out your duties in that area.
The eunuch passage, and a eunuch is someone who's
feminized.
Whose balls are cut off, and so there was really this affirmation of sexual renunciation and a kind of sexual transgression in the teachings. And, I've literally had a copy editor tell me that's not in the Bible. I'm like, well, it is. It's right there. It's like, Matthew 17 or whatever it is. I'm like, come on, it's right. There's the Greek. And he's like, no, it's not. It doesn't exist. And I'm just like, but it does exist. And this is the problem I have with a lot of things, with a lot of religious claims that they're just not held up by, if you just look at the scriptural text. Why are you giving so much authority to a bunch of texts written thousands of years ago? Why?
Why? Okay. First of all, that's a question all religions ultimately would have to ask. You would have to consult the internal logic of that religious system. Different religious systems have reasons for trusting the scriptures of their religion. I would just go ahead and throw that back at you, right? Why are you putting so much faith in your reason? Why are you putting so much faith in your infallible personal experience? And I don't think that's like a tu quoque or anything like that, because what I'm essentially appealing to is the fact that all worldviews at root have a sort of circular reasoning when it comes to the question of how they are grounding or justifying their presuppositions. The question is if those are consistent. The question is if those are internally consistent.
Why do you have to have everything rooted in the Bible, for goodness sake? What about all these other scriptural texts? Why any scriptural text? Why not rooted in human experience? And
boom. Okay, so that's what we've been saying the whole time. For this guy, personal experience is infallible.
And the human being, why give yourself over to some authority or some textual tradition from the past that that certainly exists, but it's still a kind of willful submission.
Yeah, well, I think this is the maybe difference between where our paths are, you having been so far ahead of me in the sense that
I'm 63. I'm really crabby. I'm like, yeah, that's not going to work.
Exactly, because I think I'm still at the stage of, look, I just want to take the Christian's most charitable light. Everything you say is true. This is Hegel's method in the phenomenology of resolving equivalence. I'm going to say everything you say is true. Can I still find imminent contradictions within your text? That's kind of my project now.
But I know it's not all true.
Right.
So how can I say that?
But I just know, guys. There we go. Again, it's settled because his infallible personal experience says it's not true because he knows.
And
so let me ask you this. In your current view, who is Jesus, who is Muhammad, who is Moses? Are these exactly who the Orthodox faiths claim they are? Are these complete frauds? Are these genuine saints that their tradition kind of got carried away with?
so
We might be wrapping this up soon, guys. I don't know how much longer I can do this.
Jesus and Muhammad, certainly historical figures, but we don't know their personal experience. I mean,
Okay, guys, right. We don't know their personal experience. That's what matters.
the Gospel of John is not the historical Jesus.
How do you know that? You weren't there.
But my assumption is that a lot of these historical figures had some kind of experience of divinity, and their followers frame that in a particular way. They used Greek categories and to talk about Jesus, and they used Arabic and categories to talk about Muhammad. So everybody gets framed in a different way, and it's part of the culture and part of the historical tradition. But this experience of divinity, or what I call the superhuman, I think it's universal, and I think it's as far back as we can see. And I think it gets framed and interpreted in very different ways.
In the following sense, today we see a glowing being come down from the sky. We say it's a UFO encounter.
Yeah.
In Fatima, they say it's a Marian apparition, and Muhammad thinks it's the Archangel Gabriel. Is
Correct.
that what you're saying?
Yeah, that is what I'm saying. And so I think the orb of light really comes down and really messes with human beings. But I'm not at all persuaded by the religious reception or the religious interpretations of that.
All right, guys, there we have it. He's not convinced. He's not convinced. Thank you for the psychological report. Anyways, I'm tired of this. The video's really long already, and I don't know if this might get copyright striked. I have no idea. Anyways, thank you guys for watching, and go check out my newsletter, and please subscribe. Peace.